the world in late 1999. The new millennium is just weeks away. The dot-com boom is at its absolute dizzying peak, and businesses everywhere are literally scrambling to get online. Now, if you were buying a computer to get onto the internet back then, there was a massive chance you were buying it from exactly one company, Compaq. Today, we're cracking open a really fascinating time capsule. We're looking at Compaq's 1999 SEC Form 10-K. This document reveals the inner workings of the largest supplier of computing systems in the entire world, right at the edge of a totally new era.
Okay, let's dive right into this. We're going to unpack this dense financial filing by walking through 5 key areas: the Millennium Tech Titan, the 3 pillars of Compaq, buying and restructuring, by the numbers, and finally, risks in the internet age. So, starting off with Section 1, the Millennium Tech Titan, a snapshot of a corporate giant at the edge of the internet age.
To truly grasp Compaq's dominance, you really have to understand their breathtaking scale. We're talking about a Fortune Global 100 giant, designing and marketing everything from handheld to literal supercomputers across more than 200 countries. And to put a concrete number on that dominance, $46 billion. According to the filing, that was the aggregate market value of Compaq's voting stock held by non-affiliates as of January 2000. With 1.7 billion shares outstanding, the stakes here were absolutely massive. They were playing to win the future. You can practically feel that late 90s dot-com energy right in the text of this government filing. Compaq explicitly stated their goal was to provide solutions, and I quote, for the nonstop internet world. They were aggressively positioning themselves as the ultimate infrastructure provider for the emerging internet-based economy. Moving on to Section 2, the 3 pillars of Compaq, breaking down the computing empire.
So how exactly did they plan to power this internet economy? Well, in 1999, Compaq realigned into 3 strategic groups. And what's really interesting here is how it completely shatters a common myth. If you were around in 1999, you probably remember a bulky Compaq PC sitting on your desk at home. But the consumer division, that was actually only 16% of their business. Commercial computing was 32%. The real heavyweight was enterprise solutions and services, bringing in a massive 52% of their consolidated revenue. Make no mistake, they were overwhelmingly a business-to-business powerhouse. Each of these 3 pillars was powered by some incredibly iconic hardware brands. In that massive enterprise sector, they were selling heavy-duty ProLiant and Alpha server systems. We're talking about supercomputers and fault-tolerant servers running global banking and ATM networks. Over in commercial, they equipped offices with Desk Pro desktops and Armada portable notebooks. And then in the consumer space, of course, they dominated retail shelves with the famous Presario line. Let's jump into Section 3, buying, selling, and restructuring, the drama of corporate M&A. You see, you don't build a $46 billion empire just by selling computers one by one. You build it by devouring the competition. Just looking at the timeline from the filing, it's a wild ride. In May 1997, they bought Microcom for $288 million. Then in August, they merged with Tandem to get into those fault-tolerant servers. Then came the absolute blockbuster. June 1998, they acquired Digital Equipment Corporation for a staggering $9.1 billion. And they were selling, too. In August 1999, they sold a majority interest in the search engine AltaVista to CMGI in a deal valued at $1.8 billion, realizing a massive gain. But swallowing a company as utterly huge as Digital came with a severe human cost. To integrate operations, eliminate duplication, and just generally reduced overhead, Compaq initiated a massive restructuring. The 10-K notes that accrued restructuring costs included separation benefits for approximately 17,000 employees. 17,000. It's a huge number. And the physical consolidation was just as dramatic. That same restructuring plan involved the closure of 13.2 million square feet of office, distribution, and manufacturing space. To survive and digest these mega mergers, Compaq had to ruthlessly streamline its physical footprint. Let's move to Section 4 and see how this builds into the financials. By the numbers, from massive loss to restructuring profit. So with all this buying, selling, and restructuring, what did the bottom line actually look like as the millennium approached? When you look at an actual 1999 SEC income statement, it's basically a dense wall of numbers. But the top line tells an incredible story of growth. Total revenue jumped from $24.5 billion in 1997 to over $31 billion in 1998, and then to an astonishing $38.5 billion in 1999. The top line was absolutely exploding. But the bottom line tells a story of intense financial whiplash. The swing here is crazy.
In 1998, Compaq reported a massive net loss of $2.74 billion. But then, just 1 year later, in 1999, they bounced back to a net profit of $569 million. So you might be wondering, what on earth caused a nearly $3 billion hole in 1998? The answer is actually hidden in some very dry corporate jargon: purchased in-process technology. When Compaq acquired Digital, they recorded a one-time, non-recurring accounting charge of $3.2 billion. Basically, they paid billions for research and development projects from Digital that were not yet commercially viable products. It was a monumental high-stakes gamble on future tech that dragged their entire 1998 balance sheet deep into the red. Which brings us to our final section, Section 5, Risks in the Internet Age, Existential Threats Looming on the Horizon. Despite the massive revenue and that bounce back to profitability, the factors that may affect future results section of this 10K reads kind of like a thriller of existential corporate dread. The PC market was shifting violently. You see, Compaq was built on an indirect model, which meant shipping boxes to resellers and dealers. But the internet was actively training customers to want custom-configured PCs ordered directly from the manufacturer. Compaq admits right there in the filing that they had not kept pace with this direct sales model, and their failure to rapidly transition posed a severe threat to their entire empire. And then there was the single most famous technological cliffhanger of the entire decade, the Y2K bug. As the world's largest PC supplier, if global computer networks went dark at midnight on January 1st, 2000, Compaq would literally be at the center of the blast radius. They took it incredibly seriously, as you'd expect. The filing outlines how they established dedicated task forces as early as 1997. They assessed their products, interrogated their supply chain partners, and instituted global code freezes. Over 3 years, they spent a staggering $125 million just on internal systems readiness to ensure they survived the stroke of midnight. And spoiler alert, they did survive Y2K, but looking back at this 1999 10K leaves us pondering a much larger threat. Compaq built an absolute behemoth of an empire, pulling in $38 billion by acquiring giants and completely dominating the hardware space. But with the internet entirely rewriting how computers were sold and used, can a massive, heavily structured corporate empire maneuver fast enough to outlive the very era it helped build? It's a classic question of pivot or die that every major tech giant today still has to answer. Thanks for joining me on this explainer.